Welcome into WFRV Plus Sports Night. I'm Carson Fowler. The big news out of Green Bay today: Jeff Hafley, no longer the defensive coordinator of the Packers. He will join the Miami Dolphins. ESPN's Adam Schefter broke that news earlier today. He will join John Eric Sullivan, former number 2 to the Packers general manager, and Brian Gutekunst. So Packers getting totally cleaned out by the Miami Dolphins. Who would have thought? This is a very interesting move. It's not very surprising. Given that Jeff Hafley had interviewed for, I believe, 6 of the 9 open NFL head coaching positions. He did have a second scheduled interview this morning with the Dolphins, and clearly they didn't want him to leave the building because now he's their head coach. So where do the Packers go from here? Who do they look towards? Kyle Malzahn on our 6 o'clock show discussed maybe them bringing in DeMarcus Covington, the former defensive coordinator of the Patriots back in 2024. He was the run game coordinator for the Packers this year and also their defensive line coach. They were really a great group outside of Micah Parsons getting injured. Did a really good job of stopping the run and really clogging up that, dominating in the trenches for what it's worth. But for what Green Bay is going to do in the future, that's for another day. Let's talk about Jeff Hafley, his impact on what he'll do for the Dolphins. Get this, the Dolphins were the 11th worst offense this year, and they were the 11th worst defense. They gave about 348 yards per game on defense. Not great. They were especially bad against the run, actually. They gave about 130 yards per game. Make sure I have that correct. Yep, that is good for top 10 worst in the NFL. So if Jeff Hafley is going to do anything, he's going to really revitalize that defense. He discussed with the Dolphins how he wants to, bringing pressure. He wants to play really physical football. I think he's a guy that people want to play for. Players really like him. I feel like every single guy that we talked to in that Packers locker room said that they're going to miss his energy. They really like Haf. They obviously didn't want to see him leave, but if there was a better opportunity on the table for him, he kind of had to take it. And I think he's going to do pretty well with the Dolphins. Now, it's easy to forget that the Dolphins will be playing Green Bay this year. Now, I want to say that's in Green Bay, but let me check. 2076 Packers opponents. Didn't have this pull up. My mistake. Yes, the Dolphins will come to Green Bay in 2026. Obviously, no time or date of when that's going to happen, but Jeff Hafley's going to get a homecoming in Green Bay. He's going to rejoin Matt LaFleur and his staff at some point during the 2026 season. That'll be a really interesting one. I think Hafley brings a lot to the table for this Dolphins organization that has just sort of struggled over late. I mean, I wouldn't say they've been terrible, but they just haven't found any sort of consistent success. And Jeff Hafley's won pretty much every place he's been. When he was with BC, he was extremely well coached, or that's not a good way to put it. He did a lot of really good things at BC for what has not been a very good football program over the last decade or so. And then he's done everything and more with the Packers. They were the 5th best defense in the NFL in terms of total yards allowed in 2024. They also were top 3, I believe, or top 3 or number 1 in total takeaways. I want to say they had like 31 takeaways, like 17 interceptions, 14 fumbles recoveries. That's pretty good. This year, there was a stark drop-off on the takeaways side of it, but they did do a very good job of stopping opposing offenses from moving the football. They only allowed about 270 yards per game up until losing Micah Parsons, and then it kind of all went downhill, but that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about John Eric Sullivan, because he obviously was a factor in bringing Jeff Hafley to Miami. I think he felt like he'd been around this guy for long enough to know that he could be a head coach in the NFL, and that's exactly what happened. Now, the Dolphins are in sort of an interesting predicament this offseason. Like the Packers, they are well over the cap. They are $30 million over the cap. So they're going to have to get interesting. Like the Packers, who are, I want to say, almost $25 million over the 2026 NFL salary cap. Going to be some things they have to play around with. Now, John Eric Sullivan did tell Sports Illustrated Miami that they have 5 guys that he wants Miami to hold on to, or at least he wants to build around. Is their center, Aaron Brewer, Devon Achane, their difference maker, and a running back, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Paul, and then their top wideout in Jalen Waddle. Now, he did not name Minkah Fitzpatrick, nor Zach Sealer, nor Tyreek Hill, who obviously went down with that ACL injury early on in the year. That's going to be something to watch. Also, Tua Tagovailoa, $42 million cap hit this offseason. So do you move on from the guy? Do you rock with Quinn Ewers? Do you bring in another quarterback? I want to say the Dolphins have a top 20 draft pick. Let me check. 2026 NFL draft. Let's see. The Dolphins have the 11th pick with their biggest need being a quarterback. Because it seems like after benching Tua Tagovailoa in Week 18 that they are going to move on from him. That's pretty interesting. But that would also help them out a huge amount because they're paying him a lot of money. And you gotta be under that cap somehow or you're going to be taxed. So it's a question of whether or not do you trust Quinn Ewers? Do you bring somebody else in? I think with the lack of quarterback prospects, I mean, outside of Dante Moore, who's already said he's coming back to Oregon, and then Fernando Mendoza, who, if I had to guess, he'll probably go number 1 overall. I mean, it seems like the Las Vegas Raiders are pretty set on taking a quarterback, given that the Geno Smith experiment didn't exactly work out. So that will be what they were likely to do. So I don't really know what the Dolphins are going to do, but John Eric Sullivan's got a serious, interesting situation on his hands because, like I mentioned before, now he's bringing in Jeff Hafley. He's bringing in a guy who he's familiar with, which I think will only bode well for this team. Now, if I'm a Miami fan, I think I'm pretty happy with this hire. Mike McDaniel did not leave your organization in a place where you guys were gonna go out and get some Mike Vrabel or insane head coach. And I'm not saying that Jeff Hafley isn't an insane head coach. I think he could be. Just not a lot of experience. His last head coaching stint was in 2023 with Boston College. And it's not like he didn't excel there because he did. It's just, did you want to go after a guy with maybe a little more experience? Could you even attract a guy like that? I'm not too sure. But also, he had an interview this morning. He was hired as the head coach a couple hours later. So clearly the Miami Dolphins really liked what they saw to Hafley. And the Packers are going to need a new defensive coordinator. Let's circle back to that conversation in a minute. I think we'll take a quick break here on WFRV Sports Night. But after that, I think I want to talk about Raheem Morris. I want to talk about DeMarcus Covington, maybe a couple other defensive coordinator candidates for the Green Bay Packers. But for now, we'll take a little break and we'll step away from it. Welcome back into WFRV Plus Sports Night. Carson Fowler here. We are flying solo here in the new and improved CTV studios. I mean, look at this. I mean, this spot's pretty nice. Can't complain. Let's discuss the defensive coordinator candidates for Green Bay, starting with Raheem Morris, the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, who was the DC in LA with the Rams when they won a Super Bowl back in 2022, I want to say. So he would be a really interesting candidate. I think he would probably be the top of my list. Now, DeMarcus Covington is probably someone else that I would have thought about. He was the one that came to mind first, just because it's pretty easy to internally hire someone who did a good job. Now, granted, he's only been in Green Bay for a year. However, he is receiving interest from what I'm reading here. I already knew he was receiving interest from the Dallas Cowboys, but also the New York Jets for their defensive coordinator openings. Now, personally, if I'm DeMarcus Covington and I'm offered the defensive coordinator role in Green Bay, I'm staying 100%. And now it's just whether or not Green Bay decides to go with him, because I think if they were to land a guy like Jonathan Gannon, who was with the Eagles back in the day, and he won the Super Bowl in 2020. Wait. Oh, did I get that right? Sorry. Rams won the Super Bowl in 2021. Eagles did it in 2022. Jonathan Gannon was their DC. Got that mixed up. Anyways, let's get back on track. I think the rankings for defensive coordinator candidates in Green Bay probably go at Raheem Morris, Jonathan Gannon, who was the Arizona Cardinals head coach, and then DeMarcus Covington. Now, it's just whether or not those two top guys would join Green Bay. Personally, I think this is a very attractive position given that the personnel that the Packers have on defense. I mean, you just go down the line. We'll start in the third level. Xavier McKinney, second team All-Pro safety. Evan Williams, rising star. At linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper, rising star. Middle linebacker, Quay Walker, who might not be with Green Bay next year. Isaiah McDuffie, pretty good linebacker. And then you have Tyron Hopper on the bench, who's pretty talented, young, will probably be a starter in the near future. And then beyond that, on your defensive line, Colby Wooden, the general, Micah Parsons, Devontae Wyatt, and who's their fourth guy? Who am I missing? Probably Barron Sorrell. Without Rashawn Gary would be my guess. And then at corner, Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine, Javon Bullard, Nate Hobb. I mean, you got some guys to mess around with. Now, granted, the Packers will probably go after a corner in the second round this year because that was clearly a position that was not of a strength for Green Bay this year, given what we saw at Keyshawn Nixon. It's not that he was bad, he just wasn't great. I said to Kyle earlier this year that a cornerback one needs to be a guy that a wide receiver on the other end fears. I just don't think anybody feared Keyshawn Nixon. But given all the players I just laid out, I think that's a group that a defensive coordinator would salivate at when asked about wanting to be the defensive coordinator. But now it's just about whether or not Green Bay actually ends up getting one of these guys. Because DeMarcus Covington, I think, would be a pretty good candidate. Is he better than Jonathan Gannon? I don't know. Is he better than Raheem Morris? I'm not too sure. We will see, but it's up to the Packers and Matt LaFleur to decide whether or not where they go with that hire, because I think that's going to be a really, really important decision to make in the long list of decisions that the Packers front office has to make in the next 6 months, just because the window for the Packers to win a Super Bowl is about 2 to 3 years. You have got to win in the second contract for Micah Parsons and Jordan Love before some of these guys you got to pay big time. I'm thinking Tucker Kraft's going to get a huge deal next year. You got to keep him around. Christian Watson, you got on a $13-year, $1 million extension, so you got to resign him. Those are two guys you're going to have to pay. I mean, you're already $25 million over the cap. They're probably going to have to move on from Elton Jenkins. Probably not going to be able to re-sign Romeo Doubs just because of his price tag. Kingsley Enagbare is probably, maybe if they can find a middle ground, maybe Sean Ryan if they can find a middle ground. Elton Jenkins probably out the door. I mean, there's a lot of things in motion for this Green Bay Packers team, and it's going to start with that defensive coordinator hire because they already said they're bringing back LaFleur. They've already said that deals are in the works for general manager Brian Gutekunst and executive vice president Russ Ball. So that's already off the table. But now it's this defensive coordinator hiring, which I think the Packers are still in a good spot to land somebody pretty decent, given that the Hafley deal with Miami got done more quickly rather than slowly, I guess would be how I go about that. Because, had that been dragged out for a while and the Packers didn't know, they could have missed out on some guys that were taking jobs. It also is favorable for the Packers that there's still some teams out there that probably are in a much worse position than Green Bay in terms of what they have, the organization, how much they can pay them. I think Green Bay's in a pretty good position. Like me personally, if I'm picking between Green Bay, Dallas, and New York, that being the New York Jets, I think I'm pretty sure I'm picking Green Bay. So they've got a lot stacked up, not against them. What would be the word? They have a lot stacked up for them. We'll say that. There's a lot going well for Green Bay, but they need to hit some home runs, and they need to figure out this team for next year because, man, I think people in Green Bay are going to start getting real upset if there's no title in Titletown the next few years. I mean, I already laid out what kind of needs to happen. Just haven't seen that yet. Not really sure what else to talk about. I mean, I've hit on John Eric Sullivan on what he wants to do with the Miami Dolphins roster. We've talked about Matt LaFleur the last couple of days, Jeff Hafley. Being a sports talk radio host would be kind of tough. I'm really trying to think. You know what? Let's discuss this. I got an argument with Kyle the other day, Kyle Malson, about Jordan Love's $50 or $60 million contract, whatever it is. Top 10 highest paid QBs in the NFL. So that's not the one I was looking for. Here it is. All right. Ranking the NFL's biggest contracts for 2025, most of which are quarterbacks. Number one, Dak Prescott, $60 million. Played in the league for, 10 seasons now? Josh Allen, $55 million, right there, tied for second. Joe Burrow, $55 million. Trevor Lawrence, $55 million. Kind of crazy. Jordan Love, $55 million. I got an argument with Kyle about this because you're telling me that your guy that you saw for 1 year as the starter, you're like, screw it. Let's just give him $55 million a year. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Love. I would never let that guy walk out the door. But $55 million is nuts. I mean, that's going to hurt them in the long haul because for what it's worth, he was unproven. He won one playoff game. He was 9-7 that year. They were the 7th seed. They're the only 7th seed ever to win in a playoff game. And it was against the Dallas Cowboys. They went like 13-3 with Micah Parsons, I want to say, in his rookie year, maybe it was a sophomore year. I don't know. One of the two. But it was a 12-sack season. Like, unreal game, and the Dallas Cowboys just couldn't get it done. Packers won. But did Jordan Love really deserve a $55 million per year contract? I don't know. I'm not too sure. Because where are the Packers at cap-wise? Packers cap space 2026. Oh my goodness, we've got Kyle Malzahn calling us. Kyle Malzahn, you're on CTV.
I'm here.
You're at the station?
No, I'm at your house.
You're at my house? Dude, I'm at CTV.
Oh. Well, I guess I'll call Kim. I thought you wouldn't be there anymore. All right. Well, my bad.
That was Kyle Malzahn, everyone, joining us here on CTV from my house, I guess.
All right. Bye.
See ya. Anywho, that was kind of funny. Back to the Green Bay's cap. $25 million over the cap. And get this. Jordan Love's cap hit will be $64 million. Oh my God. That is insane. $65 million. Now see, can I mess around with this? This is kind of interesting. You can like play around with the cap on this app. Let's see if I want to get cut him. All right, well, we're not going to mess around with this too much, but anywho, Packers definitely have some decisions to make. I still think going back to the Jordan Love deal, I think that kind of set them behind the 8 ball. Tua Tagovailoa getting that huge deal that year. It was the same year that Jordan Love got his deal. He got 53.1, and Jordan Love had better stats, and he won a playoff game. So they were like, well, if Tua Tagovailoa got $53 million, then I guess Jordan Love needs 55 plus or whatever. So there's that. I think we'll take a little break here on WFRV Plus Sports Night. Why don't we talk about the AFC and NFC Championship? Great football being played in this 2026 NFL playoffs. I feel like we've been blessed. And why wouldn't we talk about it? Take a break. Welcome back into WFRV Plus Sports Night. I am your host, flying solo on this MLK Monday evening. Yep, Monday. AFC, NFC Championship games this weekend. Oh my God. Man. Patriots Broncos, a rematch of the 2016 AFC Championship when Peyton Manning and the Broncos beat Tom Brady and the Patriots to go to Super Bowl 50. They ended up beating them and then going on to beat the Carolina Panthers, led by Cam Newton that year, the MVP. So that's kind of crazy. And then you got Rams Seahawks, which is a rematch of, I think, probably the best game from the NFL season. That overtime thriller at Lumen Field when Sam Darnold threw the 2-point conversion and the Seahawks won. Field Yates, who is ESPN's like key fantasy football / NFL guy, said that these two teams, like laying out the stats, I actually want to pull this up because this is wild. Well, they split the season series 1-1, but their total yards allowed to each other, how many points they gave up. Where is this? Here we go. Here it is. The Rams and Seahawks split their season series 1-1. The points scored in those games, Rams 58, Seahawks 57. Total yards in those two games. Rams 830, Seahawks 829. And now they meet again with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. I mean, goosebumps. Two of the best teams in the NFL, hands down. Matthew Stafford will probably win the MVP, almost 5,000 passing yards this year, 46 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. I mean, are we kidding? And then Sam Darnold, who has kind of, it's almost like he's a stage 3 Pokemon, the way that he's evolved his NFL career, or revitalized would be a better word. 3 seasons with the New York Jets, you go nowhere. You're traded to the Carolina Panthers. You're essentially sent there to die. Then you sign as a backup with the 49ers behind Garoppolo and Purdy. Then you go to the Minnesota Vikings. You are instantly the starter after J.J. McCarthy gets injured. You win 14 games. You lead your team to the playoff appearance and lose, whatever. And now you're in an even better position in the NFC Championship with home field advantage against a division rival in the LA Rams with a chance to go to the Super Bowl and win your first championship. I mean, goosebumps. Wow. How the mighty have risen, I guess. And then let's talk about this Patriots-Broncos matchup. Drake May, who's probably number 2 behind Stafford in the MVP voting, 4,300 yards, nearly 4,400, 31 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And then you have this young stud in Travion Henderson, who kind of turned around his season in the second half. A couple multi-touchdown games. He had a touchdown, I want to say, in the Patriots game against the Texans, but I am not 100% positive. Now, one thing to discuss is the Broncos will be without Bo Nix. He broke his ankle at the end of that game against the Bills, which is brutal on all accounts, because it's not that the Broncos can't win this game, but Jarrett Stidham has not even attempted an NFL pass since 2023. I mean, there's something to that. So, got to think about that. Who do I have winning these 2 games? I got Seahawks winning the whole thing. So I got Seahawks beating the Rams, and then Patriots Broncos. Man, I want to say the Broncos, but I just got to go with the Patriots. I mean, I just don't think that Jarrett Stidham's going to get the job done. I think the Patriots defense is overlooked for how good it is. Granted, they've played a couple of the better defenses in the NFL, so that just hasn't been the talking point. But they put up 20, 28, 20, 30, 28, 30 points. How many points they put up last week? They put up a lot against the Texans. 28 against the number 1 defense in the NFL. It's pretty good. So I got Patriots, Seahawks, a rematch of the Super Bowl in, what was that, 2017 maybe? Patriots, Pats, Seahawks. Super Bowl. When was that? That was Super Bowl. I'm so bad. 54. Super Bowl 54. That 2015? Yeah, 2015. Malcolm Butler, game-winning interception. Russell Wilson, why didn't you give the ball to Marshawn Lynch? I don't know. All right, well, I think that'll pretty much wrap it up here on WFRV Plus Sports Night. But to conclude, Jeff Hafley, no longer with the Packers. He is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He joins former number 2 to Brian Gutekunst, John Eric Sullivan. So they'll be the tag team in Miami as they navigate an offseason with $30 million of negative cap space and a team that's coming off another losing season. They have the 11th overall draft pick. Will they get a quarterback? Who knows? Or will they rock with Quinn Ewers? Questions to be seen. And similar with the Packers. They're also far above the NFL cap space limit. So they've got work to be done. We got AFC, NFC championship games coming up this weekend. Rams, Seahawks, Patriots, Broncos should be a good one, but we'll say so long from the WFRV Plus studios. Good night.